What's up, everyone? Kyle here. I am super excited to let you all know that my first published book is out now. It's called Travel Tips, a 20-something's comprehensive guide for traveling in the modern world. It's available on DoranceBookstore.com, I believe is the website. It's going to be available on Amazon and Barnes & Noble on their online websites soon as well. And you can also get a copy directly from me. You can just email me at ourtravelexperiences@outlook.com, and we can talk about a book, and I'll get a signed copy to you. I'm super excited to share it with you all. This was a dream come true for me, a bucket list item in the making, and I'm super excited to share it all with you now. So go check it out, everyone. There will be a link in the description below, and enjoy the episode. All right, welcome everyone. This is Our Travel Experiences. I'm your host, Kyle Rasmussen, and today I have with me a fellow podcaster, James. James, how are you today?
I'm very good, Carl. How are you doing?
Doing well, doing well. And okay, I know I asked before we jumped on here, but where are you at right now?
I'm currently in Ljubljana, which is the capital of Slovenia.
Yeah, what's it like over there?
Slovenia is a super cool place, and Ljubljana is like this little idyllic sort of green city, sort of in central Europe. So, yeah, it's a cool place. It's about 16 degrees. It's been nice to walk along the river, and yeah, I spoke to a guy this morning on my podcast who I met in person to talk about Slovenia and places in general. And yeah, it's a pretty cool place.
Yeah, I know Slovenia looks amazing. It's definitely on one of my bucket lists for sure.
Mm.
Yeah, so James, let's just kind of start it off. So what is the title of your podcast and how did it kind of come about?
The title of my podcast is called the Winging It Travel Podcast. And the reason for winging it is that I think once my mum told me that I was winging my life, and I thought I'd use that as a bit of a phrase for my title of my podcast. And the reason it came about is because in lockdown, when I was living in Vancouver, kind of mid of lockdown where you couldn't do anything, I thought the next
Mhm.
best thing to do other than travel is to talk about it. So I bought a
Yeah.
microphone, started speaking into the microphone as a solo person, and then got guests on to talk about their travels. And here we are 2 years later, just over.
Wow, that's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, I saw your like 105 episodes or something like that.
Yeah, that's 105 guest episodes. I think I'm probably at 150 with the solos as well.
Wow.
Something like that. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know the full figures, but yeah, around that figure.
And you've kept that up every week.
Yes, it's every Monday, and that's the guest episodes. So they're normally 1 to 2 hours, and then I try to do some solo episodes, which are like short, 10, 15 minutes.
Hmm.
Before traveling now, probably, yeah, once on the Friday, but now I'm traveling, I'm trying to add in a bit like a daily diary type thing, which is normally 2 a week. So I've got probably between 2 and 3 a week at the minute.
That's awesome. Yeah, I know I haven't had a chance to listen to too much of your podcast, but from what I've heard, it's really really enjoyable, and I love that you get a lot of local people on there. So as you're traveling, you're meeting these people and having them on. I think that's a really cool idea.
Yeah, thanks, dude. I appreciate it. I think yours and mine are pretty similar. Conversational, lots of stories, not too rigid in terms of the content.
Hmm.
And my idea was traveling now was to try and find local people or at least podcasters in the area I'm in to talk about one specific place. So this morning, as we speak, I talked to a guy called Noah, who is an amazing guy. Really, he's a doctor in terms of PhD. He's got art history masters, crime against art masters, but he also hosts a podcast for the Slovenian Travel Board, and I think he's the only sort of like English speaking podcaster and writer in Ljubljana. So it's good to like get those sort of guys on the podcast.
Wow. How do you find these people?
Yeah, that's a good question. That's pretty much for any podcasters out there who are looking to do the same idea. It really is a combination of Google.
Hmm.
So specifically, I put Ljubljana podcast. Nothing really came up. Then I kept seeing this guy Noah, but he was more like art. I thought, oh, is he anything? Then I went to his website, and there he had like a bit about him being in partnership with the Slovenian Travel Board. But yeah, mostly chuck in your location, podcaster, or local writers, and you might find a few people who are kind of about there to interview. Some like Rome, loads, Paris, loads, but Ljubljana, very, very niche. So it depends where you are.
Yeah. Wow, that's really cool. What's been maybe like one or two of your favorite conversations you've had?
Well, I've only started traveling 3 weeks ago in this new phase,
Okay.
and I've had one a week. So I love them all. They've all been quite unique in that perspective. But what was good this week, as we speak today, is I had someone who's an actual Venetian in Venice. So she lives there, and she's from there, and speaks great English. Her name is Monica Geserato, and it's great just to hear about Venice from a local perspective and not just what you see on Google and what people write about it. All the questions about cruise ships. Do they still come to Venice? Is over tourism a problem? So I had all these questions for her, and she answered everyone, and that was a real nice conversation. And my first one in Paris was Oliver G from the Eiffel Tower podcast. This guy's had like over 2 million downloads on his podcast in 4 or 5
Wow.
years. Super niche, English speaking podcast about Paris. And we met in a cafe, trendy cafe in central Paris. They're quite noisy, but it's brilliant just to sit there and talk about Paris. So, and obviously they were this morning. So they've all been really good. Like it's only been 3 so far, and I've not got one lined up next. So we'll be researching probably Budapest is probably where I'm going to go for 3 days. So hopefully try and find someone there who can come on.
Yeah, that'd be amazing. Yeah. So what is this this trip that you're on right now?
So 3 weeks ago, we left London on the Interrail Pass, which is what you can buy in Europe for the train system. And the Interrail Pass is a plethora of options. You can do a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, or a month. And you can choose how many trips, or you can have unlimited. So we just got the unlimited pass for a month. And the idea is to get from London to Turkey in a month.
Wow.
So that's the first part of the trip. And then we go on to Middle East, and then a bit more of Asia, then back to Vancouver for the summer to pick up a camper van and drive across Canada and bits of US, hopefully. So that's kind of roughly the plan this year.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. Yeah, that's really cool. I love being over in Europe. It's nice. The train system is just way better than here in the US.
Oh man, US is difficult, isn't it?
Yeah,
With
yeah.
trains. Yeah.
It's a little tough to get around unless you want to drive everywhere. But
Yeah.
even then, you got to drive hours and hours to get places.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's a rule in France. I don't know if you know this, but they brought in a rule, I think it's last year, or maybe year before, where if you can't get from A to B in the same time as the flights, let's say the train's quicker, there's no flight available. So let's say Paris to Marseille takes, I'm making this up, like 4 hours on a train. The flight can't be like as good as that. So you have to take the train because it's all to do with like, saving the planet and stuff like that. So they try and maximize you to use the train and not do like short haul flights.
Yeah, well, that's a great idea. I feel like it's easier for everyone too, and like you said, it's better on the environment, I'm sure.
Yeah. So train travel was great, and we've pretty much been quite lucky with all the trains actually. I think one late one in Switzerland, but that was very like 20 minutes. It wasn't that bad.
Very nice. Yeah, so I noticed Vancouver was on your Instagram page, but is that where you're living now, or do you just travel the world and the whole world is your home?
Yeah, great question. Where is home? I don't know the answer to that, but Vancouver was the last 4 years. So we lived there, got permanent residency, and we do actually intend to go back to get the Canadian passport at some point. But yeah, that's what I would say is home. Yeah, I think so, because I know we're going back. So yeah, Vancouver, Canada was home, but we left our jobs, quit our jobs, and we're now on this world trip, which doesn't really have a time constraint. Maybe between 12 and 18 months in that time frame.
Wow.
Depends when the money runs out, really.
hmm Yeah. Have you ever done anything like that before? Like quit a job and just traveled for a year?
Yeah, started 10 years ago. That's when I would say that was my first trip, 2013 in January. So pretty much the same time.
Okay.
I finished my degree and worked for a bit. Then I went off for a 2 year trip and done 6 months travel. Then I've done a work visa in Australia for a year.
Mhm.
And I think I've done 10 months at 12 months work, 2 months of travel in Australia. And then I've done 3 to 4 months in sort of like South America, Caribbean, bits of US, Iceland, and then back to UK. So that was the
Wow.
start of the journey.
Wow. Wow. That's amazing. How many countries do you think you've been to at this point?
Oh, that's a good question. Um, I think by the time we get to Turkey next week, to end of next week, it might hit around 60.
Wow, that's
But
amazing.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure. Around that figure.
Yeah. Is that all in the last 10 years? Did you ever travel before then?
There's a few countries before them, but they're kind of like in Europe. When you grow up in Europe, because it's so quick to fly to
hmm
Paris or to Rome, it's like 2 hours, right? And it's cheap. So like I had a few European trips now before then. Like I went to Belgium, like Brussels. I went to Turin and Milan in Italy. And I think I went to Australia actually. That was my first long haul flight for 3 weeks for Christmas and to watch the cricket. And that was kind of it, I think.
Yeah, very cool. Yeah, so what's it like with getting work visas in
Mm,
other countries? I know that's a big topic, now with the digital nomads and
yeah.
being able to do that.
Yeah. So it depends where you're from. That's the first thing. Different
hmm
countries have different rules, but for your American listeners, I do know you can get them in, is that Australia, New Zealand, I think. Um, I'm not too sure. I met some Americans doing it in Australia and New Zealand, so I assume that you can get work permits. So what that basically means is you get given a year, or if you're lucky, two, depends on the rules, and you can work and travel as much as you want within those 1 to 2 years. You just need to
hmm
leave the country at the end of your visa, right? So what I did was that first trip in 2013. I had 6 months planned. Southeast Asia, Fiji, and traveling New Zealand, and a bit of Australia. And then I knew I was going to work in Australia for up to a year to save money again, and then go traveling after that. So I kind of
hmm
used it as a bit of a yeah buffer, if you like, just to get some money together because I did really actually run out of money
Yeah.
when I was in Australia. So it was pretty hairy, but got through it.
Yeah, I've heard Australia is a really good place to if you are looking to have a work visa and work abroad. It seems like their pay is better over there or something, at least
Oh,
compared to the
like
US.
the best country in the world. I think if you to give your listeners some idea, like someone working at McDonald's is gonna earn $20 to $25 an hour. Like it
Jeez.
really is um, so good over there. And if you're semi-skilled, so let's say you do an office job, you could probably get one in Melbourne for $30 an hour. I think I was earning 26 when I was there 10 years ago. So I think it's probably
Wow.
gone up a bit more since then. And if you're really skilled, and I'm talking like a trade, you're going to be earning so much money. Like lots of people go over there and just work half the year doing their trade and then travel the rest. That really is possible in Australia. Same as New Zealand as well. Not quite as good, but pretty good.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like you always see, Australian travelers anywhere you
Yes,
go.
yeah, yeah. Because like when they're 16, they're doing like temp jobs during school, and they're still earning $20 an hour. Like
Yeah.
no wonder they've got thousands of dollars saved up by the time they get to I don't know 19 years old.
Yeah.
Mental.
Yeah. That's wild. I actually I studied abroad over there in Sydney.
Yeah.
That was early 2016, I think,
Oh
somewhere
yeah.
in
Did
there.
you enjoy it?
Yeah, it was awesome. I loved getting to travel around the country, getting down to Melbourne and Tasmania and up to the Great Barrier Reef. There's
Nice.
so
Yeah.
much there.
Tasmania's great. That's somewhere I haven't been, and just looks amazing.
hmm Yeah, it was really cool. It's kind of crazy to be, standing at the end of the world.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, yeah.
Um, yeah, that's interesting. So is there other places that you've had work visas in?
Yep. So New Zealand as well, but that was much later. That was 2017, I think, and that was a year, and again, yeah, really well paid, and just kind of utilize the platform there to go to sort of some South Pacific islands. So like Vanuatu, Fiji a little bit, but Cook Islands as well. We went to there and just kind of used that. And I've also obviously was in Canada before COVID, so
Mhm.
originally 2 years, but then that turned into four because we couldn't really leave. So we got
Yeah.
permanent residency there. Yeah,
Okay. Yeah. What do you think of New Zealand?
loved it. One of the
Yeah.
best countries in the world, 100%.
Yeah, I agree with you. That's been one of my favorite places to visit. That whole country is just beautiful.
Like the scenery is amazing, isn't it? And the people are so nice, and there's no one
Mhm.
there. Open
Yeah.
roads. It just is a bit of a dream place. The only downside is how far it is.
hmm Yeah, you're a long ways from everything.
Yeah, apart from Australia, but yeah, it's
Yeah.
unfortunately it's a bit too far from somewhere like UK, for example. It's a nightmare to get to.
Yeah. Yeah. What's that like? That's got to be a very long trip.
Probably 34, 35 hours with a
Jeez,
connection in there. Yeah, it's long.
that's wild. Yeah, even the 15 hours from Sydney to LA was a lot.
Is that direct?
Yeah, or maybe it
Not
was
yeah, not too bad.
must have been out
Yeah,
of
it's all right.
Melbourne. Um,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, it's a long time to be in a metal tube in the sky.
Yeah, yeah. I think we did the end of our Asia trip a few years back. We flew Singapore to London, and that was 14 hours. That was a
Mm,
long one. Yeah.
yeah. Thank God for movies and technology these days.
Oh yeah. As you might know, if you've got a podcast, that's a lot of hours to get some work done. So
Uh-huh.
I do
Yep.
utilize it now much better than I used to.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. It's a good time to do some of those things you might not, otherwise sit down and do necessarily.
Yeah. So not as bad as I used to be, but I guess in the old days with no films, that must have been a nightmare.
Yeah.
You had to read books.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, so over the last 10 years,
Mm.
what have you seen in terms of differences in travel and how things have changed, especially since COVID?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think I went to Southeast Asia 10 years ago, 3 months. And to give the listeners a bit of an idea, this is 2013 where smartphones weren't huge and I didn't
Mhm.
have one. So I was going with my friend place to place by word of mouth. And if they had a PC, I could log on to Facebook and give a status update. So it really was like off grid because I couldn't contact anyone. I loved it. But fast forward 5 years later, when I returned back there, different type of travel. People got smartphones. You got your home in your pocket, so a bit
Mhm.
different. Prices have gone slightly up, and also like Southeast Asia as a comparison, somewhere like Halong Bay in Vietnam, really like all these buildings have just come out of nowhere, and I couldn't believe the difference in terms of that. So that was a pretty surprising change, and also I think it's actually got slightly cheaper in a way with the flights. Like they're very routine now going to Southeast Asia or from
Mhm.
Europe or from US to anywhere else. So I think you could probably find some good deals out and about. And then post COVID, I don't really think we know yet. I think we're still in the cusp of it. But I've found this trip so far quite expensive for Europe
Mhm.
anyway. A bit shocked by that. So I'm still trying to learn the differences and also like hostel life. A lot of people are just on their phones. It's a quite quiet hostel so far. Maybe I'm not in a
Yeah.
party hostel anymore, but I'm not sure where it's going with that. But we'll see how it goes in the next few weeks. But yeah, just a little, a few changes here and there, and obviously now social media dominates travel. So you see a lot of these like influencers on TikTok or Instagram posting the
Mhm.
the amazing travels, which may sometimes give you an unrealistic approach to it. So I'd say just go with kind of like a more honest approach and don't ask for too many recommendations. Just go somewhere, check out yourself, find out some
Mhm.
places, and get your own experiences, I think.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I think that's one of the good and bad things about the influencers nowadays, especially with travel. You get, like you said, maybe a little bit unrealistic version of whatever the place is. It can
Mm,
help, give you an idea, like, oh, that looks like a fun thing to do or something,
yeah.
an interesting place to visit. But it just seems like, with all the filters and the way that you can just show what's in front of the camera and not show everything else that's there. Um, you give a little bit unrealistic impression of that place for sure.
Yeah. And it must be weird for me saying that because I do a travel podcast where I get people to come on and talk about where they've been. But there's a big difference. Like when
Hmm.
you hear our podcasts talk about somewhere, your imagination is running wild, right? Because you don't actually know what it looks like in
Hmm.
terms of what we're saying. But if you're constantly on social media looking at travel stuff, then you're gonna feel like you've seen it already, and that's a bit dangerous for that. So I think
Yeah.
there's a certain beauty to podcasts. If you wanted to just hear audio podcasts and not follow travel influencers, that's a good way to do it because your imagination's still not quite sure what you're talking about, which is a good way to go about it.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. I agree. And I try to too, at least on Instagram. I don't I don't like to use any of those filters or anything. I just take a
No,
picture.
yeah,
This is how I saw it. If you'll probably have a different view if you come here, but I'm not gonna, dress it up to make it look better than it is.
yeah, I totally agree. And some people say to me about my podcast Instagram, like, "Oh, you should strategize when to post and what to post and put yourself in it more." I'm like, I literally don't care. Like, if it's a photo that I feel like you should see, I'll post it. If it's a clip of the podcast, I'll post it. I just post when I want with no
Yeah.
real thought into it. So it is a bit of an honest approach to my travels and podcasting.
How's your podcast grown over the last couple of years?
Yeah, there's some good stuff here for anyone who's looking to go into podcasting. Let's say the first 3 months, really good. I was like, oh wow, like people are interested. And
Hmm.
then, so I started February 2021. Let's say we got to June in the summer, figures started to really fall off. And I was like, oh wow, maybe people are bored already. And it was getting to the point where I was getting barely anything. And I was starting to reconsider. But I did kind of stick at it, put a bit more work into it, a bit more work into my guests and the content. And then it started to recover a little bit. And then by the end of the year, there's a big jump. So I don't know what caused it, but some figures went up. So the first year was up and down. And then last year, steady increased up until, yeah, this year, I guess, where it's gone up even more. So it's kind of steadily going up as we go along. But
Nice. That's awesome.
not really sure why or how or who. But it seems to be the regular postings on social media, the consistent releasing of podcasts episodes seems to be the way to go. So I just release every Monday, every week, post every week, and then it's there for anyone who is kind of looking for travel podcasts. I think the key is consistency. If you
Hmm.
have listeners who know that you're going to release on a Monday, then they can come every Monday and see it's there, right? So I think that's the name of the game.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I think that consistency really, really helps. It gets people used to listening to it, every week or whatever it is. Or get that notification on their phone that, hey, this is up,
Mm.
every Monday, like you said.
Yeah, it's
Um,
tough though. It's a lot of work, isn't it? Like you must know
yeah,
this. It's so much work.
yeah. I'm sure you've been in this position too, but there's times where I get, behind and I can't find a guest. I'm like, I gotta get this out. Like, I gotta figure it out.
So
One step
that was a lesson learned in the first year that I was like that in terms of not having a guest lined up. So I made a rule that any guest on my episode, any guest on my podcast would come on, and I would book quite a few and just do batch recordings and make sure I have 3 to 6 in the bank. So if there's some down weeks, I've got ones already recorded and I can edit and release. So right now, I think I have 4 or 5 that I pre-recorded before I left, and I've still not been able to release them yet. But I do intend to release them, but I'm trying to prioritize the local ones first. But yeah, so that's the kind of lesson I learned pretty early on, is get some interviews in the bank and do some batch recordings.
Yeah, that's a really good idea. It makes it way less stressful.
Yes, it does. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So, traveling, what do you typically like to do when you travel?
So there's a few things, and I struggle with this because I feel like I should do more. But right now on this trip, I have another podcast, which is a YouTube one. It's not an
Okay.
audio one, and that's just based on coffee. So I go to a new coffee shop and record a 5-6 minute episode on where that is, what they serve, what type of coffee, the vibe, the price, the location. So I release one of those every Wednesday. So I love going to each city and recording a coffee podcast and having obviously a new coffee in a new place. So that's one thing.
That sounds fun.
Yeah, it's good fun. Yeah. I've got loads in the bank now because I just do one every city I go to. So I need to probably catch up with them. But I do release every Wednesday. That's on my YouTube channel. It's called the Trendy Coffee Podcast. And I love, Trendy Coffee. Yeah. I also love just walking the city, but also any sort of walks in the nature around the city. So tomorrow we go to Lake Bled, and we're going to do probably just a walk around it, which is about 5 to 7 kilometers. So that sort of thing is pretty cool. And I also like eating too much food, so anything localized is pretty good. And I'm up for doing the odd activity like paragliding's on my list on this trip. I don't know where yet. I need to figure that out. And I've just got certain things that I want to tick off on this trip. So I'll rattle off 5 very quickly. One was Lake Bled. One is the hot balloon ride in Cappadocia in Turkey. That's another one. And I want to do wild camping in Oman. So that's number 3. Obviously, Petra and Jordan's a massive one. I know it's cliche, but that's on our list too. And I also, we both want to go back to Nepal and do a bit of trekking. So I think those 5 were kind of on our list for this trip. So that sort of thing.
Yeah, those all sound like amazing experiences.
Not cheap, but can't wait.
Yeah,
just like they're the prioritized sort of activities, if you like.
Yeah, it's actually funny. I was talking with a friend of mine who has done trekking in Nepal, and actually she invited me later this year to go to trek up to Everest Base Camp. So
nice.
I think I'm going to try to make that happen this year. It should be a lot of fun.
That'd be an amazing experience. Yeah, that's about 5,000 meters up, right? So that is kind of on my list, but not immediately. I think we're going to do the Langtang Valley this year, but we trekked the part of the Annapurna circuit last time, and that was really good. But yeah, you'll have a great time doing that. That'd be awesome.
Yeah, I'm excited to make it happen for sure. That's one of my bucket list type of things. But what's been one of the like wildest or like most memorable moments you've had traveling?
I love my skydive in New Zealand. That was pretty cool.
Okay. Did you do it in Queenstown?
No, I done it on Lake Taupo.
Okay, yeah.
So I was on the Kiwi Experience at the time, which is like a hop on, hop off party bus type thing. Me and my friend were on there for about 3.5 weeks in the end. So that was one of the activities I'd done on that. So that was pretty cool and pretty wild for me, I think. And I think that's the one that comes to the top of my mind.
Yeah, that's I'm so still regret not being able to do that. I was in Queenstown and I had a couple
Yeah,
days left, and I had planned to skydive there, and like went through all the paperwork and everything. They took us out to where the airplane was, and
yeah.
like right as we get there, they're like, "Yeah, the weather's not good enough. Like we can't do
Uh,
this today." I'm like, "No, I'm not going to get an opportunity now." So I went bungee
yeah, that's
jumping
devastating.
instead.
Oh, okay, that's cool, isn't it? I couldn't do that. It's a bit hardcore. The only the only problem with that for me was like it's the same price almost, but like for 10 seconds.
Yeah.
Whereas skydiving lasts like 15 minutes when you free fall and then
Mhm.
glide back down. So my friend did the bungee jump and I did the skydive, and yeah, we
Ah,
watched each other do it. That's pretty cool.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I really wanted to do the skydiving, but the bungee jumping was a good one to do there instead. Since I couldn't do the skydiving, still got the adrenaline pumping, that's for sure.
Yeah, because I remember watching one of the girls on our bus. I think she went before my friend, so she was standing at the edge. She's really nervous, and they sort of gave her a countdown to go, and they went 3, 2, 1, and as she jumped, they went, "No, no, not now, not now," and that's too late. It's too late. She's gone. I mean, she's screaming her head off, and those guys were laughing at her, and it's quite cruel but quite funny.
Oh, that's terrible.
Yeah,
Yeah, I remember there was a girl who was like one or two people after me, so I was like still out there, and she wouldn't jump. Like they kept counting down, and she wouldn't jump. And finally, they
mm,
were like, "We're gonna push you off," and she
yeah.
was like just screaming, and they finally just pushed her off. Um,
Totally safe, by the way, if you
yeah,
listen. But yeah, yeah, it's quite funny.
yeah, it's a rush, but yeah, it's a lot of fun. um, yeah, what going back to the coffee really quick. I'm a big
Mm.
coffee fan, so I'm definitely gonna have to check out that podcast a little bit more now. But what has been some of the top coffee places around the world?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I wasn't into coffee 10 years ago, so unfortunately, I missed all the good spots when I was traveling in the early days. But when I've been into coffee, some of my favorite spots, I love Tana Coffee, which is in Vanuatu. So if you get a chance to go to
Okay.
Vanuatu, I couldn't believe how good it tasted. You can go to the Tana Coffee roastery, do a little tour. But all around the islands, they have Tana Coffee, and that's probably one of my favorites in terms of the taste of coffee. In terms of locations to drink, I mean, Paris is obviously one of the best.
Hmm.
Um, love Melbourne for coffee as well. There's some great spots in South Melbourne by Albert Park. I met a coffee roaster there back in the day. He won some award for being the best barista that year or something. So
Wow.
uh, the cafe is called Set Ali, so ST.ALI. That's in South Melbourne. That's worth going to. And I think recently, this probably I would probably say I've been really impressed with. It's a bit cliche, isn't it? But I think Italian coffee is good, isn't it?
Yeah.
Um, for the price and for how good it is,
Mhm.
it can't be beaten, unfortunately. So, like, we went to obviously Venice, but went to Verona and places like this, and it's just like great coffee all around. So, Italy's been top of the list like recently. But I asked this question on my podcast, and they all pretty much say Italy. So there we go. I had
Yeah.
some good ones in Greece last year. They weren't too
Oh,
bad.
really?
Bit strong though. Um, but yeah, that
That's
was
not a
good.
place I would expect to be a good coffee place.
Yeah, Greece and Turkey are going to have real strong coffee, aren't they? So I think if you're into that sort of dark roast, that's the place to
Okay.
be.
Okay. Well, I'm a dark roast fan, so I have to
Oh
check
wow,
that
you've been element. Yeah, I must say I got to plug Vancouver because I was there 4 years.
out. Hmm.
Very very light slash medium coffee place, but there's some great coffee spots there and some real trendy places. So that's a good city to check out for coffee.
Yeah, yeah, I love Vancouver. It's such a cool city.
Yeah, nice, isn't it? Yeah, great location.
I mean, the Pacific Northwest, British Columbia is so beautiful. But I grew up in Washington State. That's where I'm at right now, so not too far
Fair.
from Vancouver. But I felt like Vancouver. I feel like it's just so clean and nice, and I feel like it's a like a nicer version of Seattle in a way.
Yeah, they're very similar, I think,
Hmm.
in their ways. But I see where you're going with that, 100%.
Yeah. I remember what do we have there? They had like a maple beer or something when I was there. That was
Classic.
pretty good. I had to do all the cliche things when I was there. That was like 4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah, I think coffee is interesting in it because obviously there's the European coffee, which is what I'd say is the best, but
Hmm.
then there's Americanized coffee, which can be good but can be bad.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, I was shocked when I used to work with people who go to Starbucks. I'm like, mate, there's like basically everywhere else is better. Stop going there.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I kind of sort of went around Vancouver, checking out local places and getting them out there a little bit. Um, if you
Hmm.
want a few recommendations, Vancouver, off the top of my
Yeah.
head, I think Platform 7 is a great coffee place in Kitsilano. Kit's Beach Coffee in Kitsilano is definitely worth checking out too. So these are some of the few places I've showcased on my podcast.
Okay. Yeah, I'll have to check those out. Um, I'm curious with the cross country trip in Canada. That's something I've always wanted to do. Take the what is it, Trans Canada Highway and just go all the way
Oh,
across.
nice. Yeah.
Um, have you done that before?
No. So because Canada's huge, as you know
Mhm.
from being from the US, we've got a camper van which we used for British Columbia pretty much and a bit of Alberta. But the plan is when we arrive back in June is to drive across to see the rest of Canada that we have not seen. So that is the
Okay.
plan. And yeah, a bit of a road trip ahead there, I think. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, that I saw it. These guys, have you ever heard of the show Departures?
Yes, that rings a bell. Yeah.
Um, yeah, they're two Canadian guys that traveled to some really unique places. But they like their first episode was them traveling across Canada. Same thing in a camper van. They just went across for a few weeks. And that was one of my first like really big trips that I had seen someone do. And I was like, wow, this looks amazing. I have to do this at some point in my life. Um,
I, I think it's just the time, isn't it? That's the only issue, right?
yeah.
And
Oh
money,
yeah.
and money to extent, but because if you just have a normal job in US or Canada, you don't get like 2 3 weeks off a year. You
Yeah.
can't see Canada that much, so you need to find a bit of basically a summer's time off really to check it all out and see different places. It's definitely worth doing once in a lifetime, I think.
For sure. That's a funny or good point you bring up. I think the US and Canada so much more you live to work focus versus
Yeah,
a lot of other places around the world it's you work to live.
yep. Australia, work to
Yeah.
live.
That's why you see them all around the world.
Exactly. Yeah, it can't be a coincidence, and you're totally right. Some of the laws are really weird in North America, where you only get 2 weeks off, and
Hmm.
that's just not good. That's just not good enough. At least in Europe, if you've got a job, you'll get 4 or 5 weeks off. Um,
Hmm.
but yeah, North America is way behind on that.
Yeah. Do you see that potentially changing anytime soon?
Hmm. I think in Canada potentially, US, it, the US is so strange that the states have so much power. So do I see it changing in somewhere like Texas? No. Would someone like Oregon probably bring it in or California? Yeah, maybe. Yeah, they might start to
Hmm.
increase it, and modern companies might bring that sort of work wellness into place. But yeah, the US is a different kettle of fish. Really, I'm not sure how you could do it federally, but per state might be able to bring that in. But I think it's all about the newer generation in it.
Hmm.
They've got to bring the shift and the idea that 4 day working weeks or 35-hour weeks or 4 or 5 weeks off a year vacation is exactly the right thing. So I think they need to, or
Yeah.
we need to do that really and bring that through.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, that's been one of my big things, and what I try to promote to people is, hey, I will be the best worker that you have, but I'm not going to do that if I don't have any flexibility to, to travel and do things as I, on my time. But I'll work a lot. I'll work really hard if I have
Mm.
that flexibility, if I have that ability to, to work at 10 o'clock at night, if I feel like it, so that I can travel during the day, kind of thing. Um,
Yeah, absolutely.
I feel like, just giving people a little bit more flexibility and control over their work day and their week. I feel like one, it's going to make you happier, but I feel like people will still be really productive too.
Well, yeah, it can't be a bad thing, right? Let's say you get an extra 2 weeks off a year, and I don't know, you go to Vietnam or you go to Bolivia or something, and you come back and you're a bit more worldly and you've learnt more lessons about yourself and other cultures. It can only benefit the workplace. It can't be a bad thing.
Mhm.
So yeah, I don't understand why companies don't do that.
Yeah, agreed. um, yeah, I'm really curious, just kind of on finishing this topic, but as looking at America as someone who's not from the U.S., what are your thoughts on us?
Okay, there's a few things. I cannot wait to drive in our camper van across some of the states because they're all very unique and different to
Mhm.
each other in a way. And there's different cultures in there and different ways of living, which is really
Yeah.
cool to go and see. Amazing place in terms of country because you have, in terms of travel, so many different types of
Hmm.
trips. You can go to Hawaii or the Florida Keys for your beach, or you go to probably Colorado and go and like do some horseback riding or go and look at the mountains.
Hmm.
And if you want like a craft beer scene, you go to Portland. If you want like a proper old America, you go to like New York where it all started and Boston and yeah, just like a plethora of options to go and see and do. But I think
Hmm.
from a European perspective, we just think Americans don't travel, which
Yeah.
the majority of you don't. You don't see that many on the road that much, and
Hmm.
there's various reasons for that.
Yeah.
But yeah, overall, great country. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's kind of what I was trying to get at there. I partially why I started this and why I've kind of gone down the travel route and wrote a book about traveling and that sort of thing is I really want uh I think it's a disservice to Americans to not travel, and I think a disservice to the rest of the world. I think going and seeing different places, seeing different ways of life, different cultures, foods, whatever it is, it really helps you put things a little bit more into perspective and just see, that there's more to life than what you're used to living. So I'm really like trying to help encourage Americans to get out there and see other places. I think it'll all make us, friendlier towards each other and just more understanding of everyone and our differences.
Yeah, it can only benefit you, right? It just
Mhm.
can't be a bad thing to go and travel. Like it really can't, and you'll learn something about yourself or another culture
Yeah.
to bring back to home. Is it right? I don't know if the stats right, but like 10 or 11% of Americans have passports. It's not a lot of people compared to the country where you've got 330 million. So
Hmm.
there's a lot of people don't travel, and a lot of those people who do have passports only do business travel. So like
Yeah.
they don't even see other places. So, but I must say, all the Americans you meet traveling are brilliant because obviously trying to get out there, see new cultures, very liberal, very like laid back.
Hmm.
Um, like the ones that are backpacking, that type of travel. Um, Obviously, a lot of people see the sort of package tour type American travelers, which are okay, but they're very different to the sort of like independent backpackers who are going around.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's kind of funny now that you say that. I see as I've traveled over the years, you see those, more backpackers, staying in hostels that are younger
Yeah,
Americans, and then you don't see anyone that's in, the middle age of their life, and then you'll see those retirees that are coming on the cruise ships and things like that. Um, but that's it. You don't see a lot of other travelers out there.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember a group of Americans on my Halon Bay tour that I did the second time round, which was only 5 years ago. And I think one of this minibus on the way to, so you get to Hanoi, and then you take about a minibus which gets to the coast where Halong Bay is. So in that ride there in the minibus, like these three American guys, super nice guys, but they're just like couldn't believe that Vietnamese people live in like normal apartments and had normal buildings. And I think one of them said, "Oh wow, they've got like buildings like us." So like quite innocent, but also just good. Like he's learning that
Yeah, yeah.
it's not like 70 years ago. Um, so he's learned about that culture, and I think that's a good thing.
Hmm.
Also, at home in the UK, what do people think of America? They just see this place that you want to go to on holiday because it's so much bigger. The
Yeah.
food's amazing. It's you go to Florida, it's sunny, or you go to New York, it's like a huge big city with all these skyscrapers. I think it's like a little wish list on a lot of people's minds when they grow up
Mhm.
because you see it on TV as well, right? So I
Yeah.
think that's always there.
Yeah. What have you gotten to travel much of the US?
I've been to not many states, so I've been to Oregon, so I've been to Portland,
Mhm.
and I've been to Seattle, of course, in Washington, and I've been to LA, San Francisco on the west, and then dipped to Las Vegas a couple of times. One was just before COVID hit, like that weekend before, or a
Okay.
few weekends before. That was then. Popped into the Nevada desert and stuff like that. And then East Coast would be just New York.
Okay.
I've also been to Hawaii as well. That was a long time ago. Yeah, I can remember off the top of my head.
Yeah, very nice. Where do you want to go when you're road tripping?
Texas, that's
Texas?
on my
Okay.
list. Texas, I want to go to New England at the top right.
Hmm.
So very different places there, I think,
Yeah.
in terms of culture and thinking. But yeah, so top right, so New England, I want to do all that. Texas is definitely one. And yeah, I don't really have plan than that. I think they're the two main ones. I've got a few listeners in Georgia actually, in the state.
Oh,
So I like to go in. Is Charleston in Georgia? Forgive my American geography.
South Carolina.
South Carolina. Okay, I want to go there.
Yeah, that's a
My geography
beautiful
in the US
city.
is pretty bad. Yeah, so I'd love to go there. Some of the Virginias as well. I've got some listeners from there and some podcasters like that. Mount Rushmore, Yellowstone, Yosemite, they're the classics. Zion National Park, I think they're up there too. So yeah, kind of there's too much in America, but they're the ones
Yeah.
I can think of, I think.
I know. I recently back in December finished traveling to all 50 states.
Oh
Um,
wow, that's great.
and
That's a great achievement.
yeah, even that. I mean, I spent 3 years of dedicated time, making those trips happen. Uh, it took that long to make it happen. So it's a big country to try to check off all of it.
What's your top three or top five, if it makes it easy, in no
Oh,
order?
um, you know, I would say number one is probably Colorado. Uh,
Nice. Yeah.
yeah, beautiful, beautiful state. You got the mountains, you got a lot of stuff there. Um, I'm pretty biased towards Washington. I think we got some really beautiful stuff up here, especially the national parks.
Hmm.
Um, you can find, you got the big city too. It's really beautiful up here. Um, I'd probably say California's up there. I lived in San Diego for 4 years, so uh,
Nice. Yeah.
California just up and down. I mean, it's very different in the north compared to the south, but you have everything there. If you want a big city, you want the beach, you want the mountains, you want the national parks, islands, whatever it is, you got it there. Um, then I'd probably say I really like the New England area, like Vermont, New Hampshire, Maine,
Yeah.
uh, and then I would include Massachusetts in that. I love Boston, one of the coolest cities, Boston. But yeah, I mean, like you said, it's so different. The cultures are so different across the country. You know, the ways things are done, how people think. It's so different across the country.
Yeah, it's an amazing place to go and check out, isn't it? I'd love to go to every state. That'd be pretty cool.
Yeah. I do recommend like for a road trip, going through that Midwestern part of the U.S., seeing Mount Rushmore,
Yeah,
going to the Dakotas, down to Texas, over to Utah, Colorado, like in the summertime, one of my favorite places in the world.
yeah. Utah looks insane for that like natural geography. Looks
Yeah,
unreal.
yeah, that's a wild state. From the Great Salt Lake to all the, I think there's like seven national parks there or something like that.
Yeah.
They have some wild.
Yeah, looks cool.
Um, um, well, James, anything else that you want to share in terms of your podcast, in terms of your travels, tips, tricks, anything like that?
Just don't be afraid to make the leap. And what I mean by that is if you are doing a job that you don't like, use it, get some money from it, and whilst you do that job you don't like, plan something else after it,
Hmm.
and just go and travel and dip to somewhere you just don't know much about. That could be Europe, that could be Asia, Africa, whatever. Just go and pick a country, jump in, see what you find, navigate your way around. It'll take a few days to get acclimatized, stick with it, and yeah, kind of get out there a bit more. Really, I think, especially like I said before, the US calendar holidays is not great, 2 or 3 weeks. So yeah, if you're happy with that, that's fine. But if you really want to travel more, you've got to figure out a way to maybe try and maybe have a bit of time off, like a summer off or something like that,
Hmm.
and try and put a plan in place to do it. It took me 4 years to save some money to do this trip. So um, COVID helped actually because you couldn't go anywhere.
Yeah.
Um, that's a bit of an easy one, but don't get too disheartened by the travel influences because a lot of them aren't doing it really like properly. So
Hmm.
don't feel like you're not going anywhere. It's just there for bites really and getting social media, likes and stuff like that. So, but
Yeah.
also use it for inspiration. So yeah, that's kind of what I would say. And in terms of podcasts, just get a microphone, start it, do it every week or 2 weeks, keep it going, and you'll get there eventually. I think.
Yeah. Do you carry a microphone with you?
Oh yeah, we can geek out for a minute if you like. I've got tech wise, I've got a microphone USB, which is I'm speaking into now.
Okay.
It's plug and play. I've also got my MacBook Pro, which I use for editing, and
Hmm.
I use Final Cut Pro, which is a video editing software for my audio and video podcast for the coffee.
Hmm.
I've also got my Bose headphones, which I can use to plug in or use by Bluetooth, which have good microphone on and noise cancelling on. I've also got a Boya mic, Boya. It's a dual mic into one. So you plug it into your iPad or your laptop, and there's two mics attached to it. So
Okay.
when I interview someone, they can attach a mic to themselves, attach it to me. If you want to hear what that sounds like, you can listen to the latest three podcasts. I've been using that.
Okay.
And I also have a Rode microphone, I think it's a video mic for my recording of the video in terms of the coffee podcast. So that attaches to my camera to do that sort of stuff. But that can also be obviously in my laptop if I need to use that too. So I
Hmm.
think tech wise, I've also got like a fake GoPro, which is good backup, and I've used it for a few things. So yeah, a lot of tech, and I use obviously my Mac, but also an iPad as a backup. But that's more for browsing, but that can be used for podcasting as well.
Okay. Yeah. All that sounds like it's pretty compact and easy to travel with. Yeah.
Yeah, because if you were doing it properly, you would have like a big interface where you have like 2 or 3 microphones going in with like a microphone arm onto the table, and
Hmm.
it's just too much and too expensive to carry. So I've tried to keep it fairly nimble. So I've covered all bases and nothing's broken yet. So I'm getting away with
That's good.
it.
Well, that's good. Well, really quick, one last question.
Sure.
How has how has traveling changed your life?
That is a question that I ask on my podcast at the
Ah.
end. What is my answer? Well, it all depends what you're interested in. But for me, what else is there? There's a difference between liking travel and loving it. So people like to travel, which is every year, which is fine. But I think I fall into the category of loving it. I think there's actually 4 categories, if you like. So
Okay.
there's a category who have no interest, don't like it. There's the next category who kind of do their vacation time of year, maybe pop to one country or a bit of holidaying every year.
Hmm.
The second category is probably where I am, where people like me try to quit their job, go traveling, get a job, save again, and do it again, like a repetitive syndrome, sort of going into trying to make it a full-time thing. And then the fourth category is your extreme travelers who do it all the time and somehow finance it. I don't know how, but they're like all the time doing it. That's probably where I'm trying to get to eventually, but that's quite hard to do unless you can figure out a way to get like a decent amount of money. So I think for me, it's now a lifestyle rather than just a little dream to get there after working for 3 or 4 years. I'm now trying to make it a thing. So it's the best thing to do. You meet loads of people, you meet loads of different cultures, eat loads of different foods, different coffees. You can chill out for a day if you want to as well. Stay in hostels, stay in jungles, stay at homestays. You can really do anything you want in any country to a degree. And it really is the best thing to do. Can't think of anything else that I'd rather do.
Yeah, 100% agree. Well, James, really quick, just plug your podcast again and everything. Make sure people know where to find you.
Cool. So Winging It Travel Podcast on the usual Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, etc. I don't actually really have a proper website at the minute, believe it or not. It is coming, but kind of a bit slack on that. But you can find me on social media. So Winging It Travel Podcast. Instagram is probably my most used alongside TikTok. I do occasionally frequent Facebook, but more my crowd are younger, not older. And on YouTube, you can check out my other podcast called the Trendy Coffee Podcast. And that's every Wednesday for 5 to 7 minutes where I showcase a new cafe somewhere in the world. And I've got quite a few lined up from this trip so far. So next week will be Paris. I'll be starting to do a few in there that I went to. And I think that's pretty much it. If you want to contact, email jameshammondtravel@gmail.com. That's a contactable way to contact me. And you can DM me on any social media. So yeah, that's kind of where we're at.
And I'm looking at your link tree right now. I'll put that in there in the description as well. But yeah, James, thank you so much. I really appreciate the time. I know I'm taking away from your travels here a little bit, but I appreciate it, and looking forward to seeing you somewhere around the world soon.
Kyle, it's been super fun. Thanks for having me on, and it's not been a dent into my travels. It's been nice to chat for an hour about travels I've done previously, so it's never a chore. So thanks for having me on.
It's a fun conversation, you know. Travel's a good thing to talk about.
It can't be a bad thing, can it? It's not like talking about politics. So yeah, it's always a fun. Yeah, thanks, Steve. Appreciate it.
Yeah, for sure. Anytime. Well, thanks again, James, and you have a good rest of the night.
Cheers, dude. You too. Thank you.
All right. Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Hey everybody, Kyle here. If you enjoyed today's show and want more, you can always check out every episode on Spotify, Anchor, YouTube, and now Amazon Music as well. Just search for Our Travel Experiences on any of those platforms and it will pop up. You can also find everything all in one place on my website, ourtravelexp.com. And if you want to see my travel pictures as well as travel pictures from guests on the show, you can check them out on Instagram. The page is called Our Travel Experiences Podcast. And if you want to share your own pictures on the Instagram page or be a guest on the podcast, you can message me via that Instagram page or email me at ourtravelexperiences@outlook.com. I would love to see your pictures and hear about your travel experiences, so please send them my way. And if that isn't enough for you, make sure to check out my weekly YouTube show, From Around the World Fridays. Every Friday, I'm taking 5 to 10 minutes to answer questions from listeners, share some souvenirs that I bought over the years, share my postcards over the years that I've accumulated, or share videos and pictures from one particular city or country that I visited, and so much more. So check it out, guys. You won't be disappointed. And make sure you go subscribe to that as well. Thanks again for listening, and I'll see you somewhere around the world soon.